Hey guys, and welcome back to the ASX Investor channel, and welcome to another ASX CEO interview. Today, we will be diving into the lithium sector. Of course, we know about the huge excitement surrounding the EV battery materials space, and we know that there's a range of new companies really hoping to fill in the opportunity within supply chains. We've had discussions on the channel before about the European supply chain, the need to localize that, and of course, the accommodative government regime that's really pushing this transition towards electric vehicles. Today, we're very excited to be unpacking the Vulcan Energy Resources story. I'm sure many of you are familiar with ASX VUL, and we're really grateful to be joined by the founder and the CEO, Dr. Francis Wedin. Francis, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel, mate. A big day as well with Stellantis. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for the invitation to come on.
It is an absolute pleasure. I guess the best place to start might be with a bit of an overview about the Vulcan story, of course, located in the Upper Rhine Valley. You've got quite a unique operation with direct lithium extraction, both on the lithium side and the renewable energy side too. Did you want to talk about the project and what zero carbon lithium really means?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So I guess where we came from, we really started with a blank sort of whiteboard a few years ago with zero carbon lithium written on it, and really working backwards from there to try and sort of get to where we are today. In essence, the reason for being for the company is the lithium supply chain has quite a high environmental footprint, particularly the carbon footprint. And obviously the lithium market is going from being a very small market to being a very large one in a very short space of time, basically starting now over the next few years and decades. And we're big fans of EVs, obviously, but most of us drive them, but we don't want the, I guess we don't want the good work of EVs to be partially undone by the metals part of the battery having a very high carbon footprint. So really our mission is to kind of help to decarbonize the battery production on the lithium side. So we started with that idea. We progressed to looking at direct lithium extraction combined with geothermal energy. So lithium comes from brines and hard rock. My background is more on the hard rock side of lithium. And I started the company with a chap called Dr. Horst Kreuter, who came from the geothermal space. So it was really a coming together of the worlds of geothermal energy in Germany and lithium extraction. And essentially we were looking at, well, direct lithium extraction of the type that is currently in commercial use, the absorption method, which has been used for over 20 years in the industry. It needs heat generally to operate. So it's quite a convenient marriage with geothermal brines, provided you get the right lithium grades and geochemistry within the geothermal brines. It works pretty well because the heat is basically inherent in the brine. It's a preheated brine. So we were looking at, that's how we started off as a concept. And then when we started Vulcan, we secured a very significant position in the Upper Rhine Graben, the Upper Rhine Valley, which is in southwest Germany bordering France. From a study that we did initially, it seemed to be one of two places in the world, including California in the Salton Sea, where this could really have a good chance of becoming commercial. And so we, as you mentioned, we see Europe as being chronically undersupplied, has no local supply of lithium chemicals at the moment. We really saw the strong supply demand thematic there. And we also saw a big demand for renewable energy build out in Europe as well, particularly on the heating side, which geothermal is uniquely positioned to fill. So started this as a combined lithium and renewable energy project. And essentially we've been building out the process and the flow sheet with a strict zero carbon mandate. So aiming to be either carbon neutral or carbon negative across the board, which I think we've demonstrated so far we should be able to be, and a strict zero fossil fuels mandate on the flow sheet as well.
And I think that flows through, and we'll discuss that with some of the offtakes as well, but we're seeing more and more importance on bringing down the embodied energy. Of course, we know manufacturers want to move towards carbon neutrality. Traditional hard rock methods have been quite energy intensive, even though the end result is obviously moving towards EV. Did you want to talk about the opportunity potentially for a premium on ESG produced products, or where you're thinking about ESG could move forward with lithium production?
Sure. Well, I think what we're seeing, in our case, so we recently completed a number of binding offtake agreements for lithium production with some fairly major automotive and battery and cathode manufacturers in Europe. with more to come hopefully as well. And I think I think one of the main reasons we've been able to do that, quite early on in the project's life, really, considering we're planning to enter into production in 2024, is because of the ESG credentials of the project. So one of the main inspirations for starting this was seeing the likes of, Volkswagen, Stellantis, Umicore, LG, all of these large companies focused on the battery space, saying they want to produce net zero carbon batteries and net zero carbon EVs, including all the raw materials in the supply chain, and that they would prioritize producers who had low carbon footprint or zero carbon footprint. So that in itself is a bit of a premium, being able to sort of lock in those sort of long-term supply agreements, which somewhat de-risks the project and assists with project financing. I think we can't go into too much detail on the specifics of how the pricing works, but I think we certainly see it as a premium product. I think we're seeing in other industries as well, sort of things like steel and aluminium, there is a bit of a green premium emerging for zero carbon steel, zero carbon aluminium. I think that's going to happen across the board, and I certainly see no reason why it shouldn't happen in lithium as well.
Yeah, for sure. And just to help conceptualize it for the viewers, are we able to speak a little bit about the process itself? So leveraging the geothermal brine, and then obviously go through direct lithium extraction and ultimately end up with that hydroxide product ready to be sold. Are you able to give that insight, and then how the renewable energy component happens as well out of the geothermal brine?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drilling multiple geothermal wells across the Upper Rhine Graben reservoir, which is it's twofold. It's a geothermal reservoir, and it's a lithium resource as well. We'll be drilling these deep geothermal wells, sort of somewhere between 2 and 5 kilometers deep, depending on where you are in the Graben system. We'll be pumping the hot brine, lithium-rich brine, up to the surface, producing energy from this brine, and depending on where we are in the system, we have the flexibility to produce electricity, which we get a feed-in tariff for, and heating for local stakeholders, local municipalities or local businesses. That's nothing new under the sun, that first part. It's already been done in the Upper Rhine Valley. And our team in Germany is really uniquely experienced at developing these projects. So we'll be doing that part. And then usually what happens is the brine gets re-injected back into the reservoir. So it's all a closed loop system. In this case, we won't be doing that. So we'll be diverting the brine through what's called a absorption circuit. So it's a form of direct lithium extraction, which is kind of a catch-all term. The brine basically contacts, so it goes through a series of columns. It contacts an alumina-based sorbent, and the lithium essentially adsorbs onto the sorbent. The brine then gets re-injected, just minus most of the lithium. So once again, it's a closed system, and then you desorb the lithium chloride using a water strip. So you don't use any reagents in that process, which is a real advantage. So you strip it off with water. You've effectively upgraded the concentration of the lithium, so you have a more concentrated lithium chloride eluate. But most importantly, you've taken the lithium out and left pretty much everything else in the brine, so it's much purer. You then need to, and that process needs heat, so that the heat comes in the first time there, and the brine is preheated, as I said. And then you then need to concentrate that. So you need to get it up to sort of a 42% lithium chloride con. And that's where the heat comes in again. So we're co-located or nearby to these geothermal plants. That's the idea. We'll be using steam from the geothermal plant to drive a forced evaporation process. So the same process that's used in the salars in South America to produce lithium, but minutes instead of months, basically. So we use that steam. So the geothermal plant once again comes into its own again. Then we end up with a lithium chloride concentrate that gets transported to. We'll sort of have a hub and spoke model, and really we want to have effectively a dozen of these projects across the Upper Rhine Graben. We want to have lots of them. And the hub is the Höchst chemical park just outside of Frankfurt, where we've secured a site for our lithium hydroxide plant. And there we'll be converting lithium chloride to lithium hydroxide. There's two flow sheet, or there were two flow sheet options open to us there. There was the sort of quote unquote traditional route, which is produce lithium carbonate first with reagents, and then using liming to produce lithium hydroxide. That was always available to us, still is, but we prefer a slightly less conventional routes in the lithium industry, certainly, although conventional in the salts industry, which is essentially electrolysis, lithium electrolysis. And there's a number of reasons for that. So we have freely available, infrastructure and power to do that, which is not really available when you're in the middle of the desert. So that's a good reason for doing it. We're able to make this process as a whole zero carbon because we're able to use green electricity rather than using a large amount of reagents. So it helps to get the carbon footprint down. And it's also slightly lower OPEX as well, although not a huge difference with the traditional route. So out comes direct lithium hydroxide at the end. We do have the flexibility to produce lithium carbonate from that in sort of the reverse of the traditional way. So we can produce lithium carbonate if it's required down the track. Most importantly, we have a life cycle assessment for this process. We've continually updated it with an independent life cycle assessment provider. We actually did the first life cycle assessment for lithium hydroxide production when we first started. And as far as we can see, it should be a net negative carbon footprint process. So what we mean by that is we're not absorbing carbon from the atmosphere, to be clear, but we are producing more renewable energy than we consume, and we're selling that energy into the grid. So therefore, having a decarbonizing effect. And as I said, net position, instead of being plus 15 tons carbon per ton lithium hydroxide, we should sit at about negative 2.9 tons, according to our last study. So a material, hopefully decarbonizing effect on the lithium industry.
It is an innovative process, and of course it's attracted a lot of investor interest, but most significantly as well over this past period, it's really attracted the manufacturers' interest. So we've got 4 offtakes: Umicore, LG, Renault, and today Stellantis, really household names all in their own right. We'd love to hear your thoughts about how the discussions have been playing out and what these offtakes mean for the future of Vulcan Energy now moving forward.
Yeah, we're very happy with the offtake partners that we have on board so far. I guess we've said from the beginning that we want to partner with, really sort of tier 1 customers in Europe with, credible electrification growth plans, and those supply chains really aiming to be localized in Europe as much as possible, because that's our very reason for being. So I think that's really in line with what we've done here to date. There's quite an extensive due diligence process that goes on with these types of arrangements. So that's what we've been working on, during the course of the year. Happily, we've sort of got to where we are, which is the definitive offtake agreements with 3 companies and a binding term sheet with a 4th, which should be converted to a definitive offtake agreement as well soon. So we're really happy. I think just happy that we're hopefully going to have as I said, a really material decarbonizing effect on these supply chains in Europe. And we saw that today, with the size of the volume we agreed with Stellantis. It's a really significant offtake agreement. They've got 3 battery gigafactories that are in the works for Germany, France, and Italy, and we'll be supplying these plants. So hopefully we'll be seeing it happen in real time across the lithium supply chain in Europe.
For sure. And just spending a little bit more time reflecting on those offtakes. Of course, Stellantis today was a milestone one, but there is the potential, especially with Vulcan's massive resource, the largest JORC resource in Europe, to continue to add on new capacity in a modular fashion. Is there expectations potentially about some more offtakes down the line? Can investors look forward to that moving forward?
Yeah, 100%. So we actually expect to publish some more on that even before the end of the year. So we've got some really active discussions happening in the background on that front. We do plan, because I guess over the last few months, we have had very strong demand from off-takers who are European focused, and frankly, we can't accommodate all that demand at the moment. So we are looking to see if we can increase our production pipeline capacity, and we certainly intend to do so. So I think over the next few months, during the course of the feasibility studies that we're doing, we hope to update investors on essentially building in more projects, multiple more modular projects, as you said, across the upper Rhine Graben. And the way we've designed the process, the geothermal and the absorption, the DLE, it lends itself really well to that modular design. And we're basically, we're building out this renewable energy capacity as well, which is also very, a really sort of hot topic in Germany and Europe at the moment, with the energy crisis over there, particularly for heating. So I think that's very welcome as well, locally, and state and national level. So that's what we'll be focusing on doing, and hopefully lithium offtakes and heat offtakes into next year as well. We should be updating investors on that as well.
The heat offtakes will definitely be a fascinating one. And we've talked about a fair few of the benefits already. We know initially, obviously, building the two different businesses, there's a fair bit of CapEx, but it'll be relatively low OpEx once it gets going. You've got a world-class team really helping to deliver this. You've got the direct lithium extraction process, which is innovative. What is that special sauce that you think investors should be really focusing on when they're looking at the ASX VUL opportunity?
Well, I think it's that, it's that commitment really from the ground up to build a project from scratch, which has that strict mandate of being net zero carbon. We're not sort of retrofitting an existing project. We've actually designed this whole process with that philosophy in mind from the beginning. So I think our special sauce is really that commitment to be zero carbon all the way through from now until production, and to really be, as much as we can, really be a leader in sort of ESG. And we're looking to do that on other fronts like biodiversity as well, with the TNFD guidelines, which should be coming in soon as well. So we're really trying to be at the forefront of that. I think that's part of our special sauce, and that really leads, I think, into better ability to attract really high quality personnel into the company. So we've been able to sort of headhunt really good people from much bigger companies than ourselves so far, which I think really assists with certainly the progress of the company so far, and hopefully going forward. And team of roughly 85, 90 people so far, and I think we'll be double that sort of sometime next year. So really growing rapidly, and the ability to attract and retain good talent is, I think, partly embedded in the ethos of the company.
The ASX VUL share price, like many companies in the lithium sector over the past 12 months, has had a phenomenal uplift. It must have felt like a whirlwind for you. I'd love just to hear some reflections on how you've taken it all, but also what should investors be looking out forward to over the next 12 months for the Vulcan Energy story?
Sure, yeah. I mean, for me, it's as you say, it's been a whirlwind. But I think most of us in the company just kind of have our heads down, not sort of getting too carried away with what happens day to day in the market, but really sort of trying to look out, 3 years, 4 years from now, where we're going to be as a company. I think that's sort of how we see it. We just see kind of a stepwise, methodical, just continue to execute. I think things to look forward to for us going forward. I mean, as I said, in the immediate term, I think there'll be some more news flow on offtake, lithium offtake, also M&A. I think into early next year, we'll be starting to talk about those heat offtakes with local stakeholders, which is very critical, obviously, for public acceptance for the project. So we'll be starting to talk about that going forward as well. We'll be starting up our demo plant in Q2 of next year. So we have a pilot plant and a fully functional laboratory, which is already operational, operating on geothermal brine in the Upper Rhine Valley. But the demo plant is going to be much larger, so roughly a 1 in 200 of our plann's first commercial plant. So that would be a really good opportunity, I think, to take stakeholders around and show them how it all works. And then obviously the DFS for our phase 1 that will come shortly thereafter. And then just looking, I guess, of ways we're going to be hopefully building out further renewable and lithium production capacity across the Upper Rhine Valley and across Europe.
It is a fascinating pathway to production, and we'll continue to watch where the story heads. Just wanted to hear some final reflections, potentially for those longer-term shareholders of ASX VUL or those prospective shareholders who might be looking at Vulcan Energy Resources now. Did you have any final words that you wanted to leave with them?
Well, thanks for the support. We're very pleased, I guess, with the relationships we have with our shareholders. I think everyone is as committed as us to making this work and to have a sort of a material impact on the markets, and really to help with that decarbonisation and renewable energy build out. So I'd say thank you, and hopefully we'll continue to deliver. It is I always say, this is a pretty leading edge project in a number of ways, and that comes with a lot of challenges. We are trying to do something in many ways that hasn't been done before. I just like to make it very clear that there are those challenges ahead of us, but I think we couldn't ask for a better team to help de-risk those challenges. And we just want to continue sort of just methodically progressing the project through to production. So watch this space, and hopefully exciting times to come for all of us.
That is the Vulcan Energy Resources story. It's ASX VUL. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Feel free to share it out. We make daily videos, so make sure you've subscribed and turn your bell notifications on so you don't miss any of our daily episodes. Dr. Francis Wedin, it was an absolute pleasure catching up. Really enjoyed unpacking the Vulcan Energy story and looking forward to seeing where it heads from here moving forward.
Thanks again for your time. Thanks for having me. Cheers.